Okay, guys, one of the things I was just doing here before I start putting edge banding on is I have some lacquer thinner, and I'm just wiping the surface, just cleaning it up. One of the neat things about melamine and laminate both is that if you use them for a tabletop, you can write notes all over them and then just wipe it clean when you're done with some lacquer thinner. And I'm just cleaning it up because it gets smeared the more I push it around on the table saws and everything. But sometimes I'll write my notes on, and halfway through I might have to clean it up and redo some of the specific notes. If I put a piece of tape, a lot of times I've had the tape catch on the edge of the table saw as I introduce the board to the table saw, and the tape catches in it. It causes that little shift, and then that disrupts the smooth, even feed rate that you want to create when going across the table saw. So what you will see is after I get it all put together, a lot of times I'll clean it up one last time and put blue tape on it with notes. That way, when I take it to the job site, all my notes are on there. And it might not be me doing the install, so I need to make sure I have all the information on there somewhere to make it easy for the installer. Basically, I try to treat anybody that's installing my product the way that I would want to be treated. Okay. Now, at this point, your board has got your final cuts on it, and hopefully it's a relatively chip-free cut, but you want to be careful not to chip it out anymore. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is use a little scrap of wood to protect the edge when you put it in the vise. And I want to put the edge banding on the side that's cut. Okay, because I've already taken my notes off. I see I got the minor chip here and right here on side 3. Okay, here's what you're going to need for edge banding your doors. You're going to need the melamine edge banding that matches. You're going to need a pair of scissors to cut it. And then what you're going to need to do is apply it with the iron. And then you're also going to need a file and a sharp chisel for cutting the excess off. Now, one of the neat things about the edge banding is that it comes in 13/16. And when you place it next to the melamine, you'll see that it stands just slightly proud of it. And what that allows for is a little bit of overhang that is easily trimmed off, and it's actually very easy to center up. Now, I just bought my melamine edge banding at Home Depot, and I do like the brand that they have. Actually, I bought a 250-foot roll of edge banding from my local supplier. Did not like the way that it behaved, and it cost half as much per lineal foot, but it gave me twice the trouble, and I still couldn't, in the end, create as nice a product as the EdgeMate brand edge banding. So I'm very happy with EdgeMate edge banding, even though it costs twice as much a lineal foot. It's easier to handle, and the edges of it don't chip quite as easily, and it files nicer and everything. It just cleans up much nicer. In the end, my product's better, so I will spend twice the money per lineal foot to get a superior product. Basically, what it comes down to is liability exposure for me as a business. So here's what we'll do. Both the pieces, I'm just going to pre-cut my pieces. And I'm just going to use this one side. Oh, I got to get my special board. Something else that is kind of the secret to successful edge banding is I have a rub block here, and actually this is also a sanding block, but I like using a hardwood, a good hardwood like hard maple or black walnut, because it kind of gets a polished, nice, slick surface to it. And this one is made of black walnut, and it's 2 inches by 6 inches and 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's just the perfect width to handle and to place on the panel that I'm edge banding, and to rub it on. And there's a couple ways that I can use it. It can use it going wide with a hand on each side, or I can rub it this way. And then if I kick up one of the edges, so it's writing on just one edge, you can really focus the pressure. And I'll see you, you'll see how that works, because it kind of helps seal the deal, if you will. Not trying to be a Dr. Seuss there. Okay. We got our iron is heated up. I usually set mine on about 5. And you may want to check different heat settings. What I suggest you do is take your edge banding, whether it's a real wood edge banding with the iron-on glue or the melamine, and try it on a test board and try the different heat settings and get a feel for how long you can linger on one spot, how much you need to keep moving, and see if it scorches. I typically don't have a problem scorching melamine, but I have scorched maple edge banding a little bit, and I had to back the heat off or just not linger as long. So one of the things about edge banding is if you have a short edge to glue on, then you could start at one end and work towards the other. But really, it's better to start in the middle and then work your way out. Okay. Now what I like to do is just give a little bit of heat, and you just kind of center it by feel. And then here I'll kick the edge of the board up just a little bit to get a good seal right on the edges. And then you can see as I pull it towards me, I kick it up. As I push it away, I kick it up on the far side and kind of focus the pressure right on the edge. And that just gets a good bond going. Now I've got it bonded in the middle. I can work to the outside edge. Here's what happens. If you start at one end and you're working towards the other, if it's off a little bit, it gets more difficult to deal with. If you start in the middle and it's off just a little bit, you don't have much further to go on either end, and you can straighten it out. Now, if you start to have trouble, you can actually reapply heat and remove this altogether if you mess it up, or you can also apply heat and shift it slightly, and you can get away with that a couple times before you ruin the glue on it. So this particular iron does not have Teflon on the bottom, but I do have another one. I have 2 irons, and the other one has Teflon on it, and both of them do fine. The one without Teflon, this model right here, it leaves some black marks. Some of the metal kind of leaves some black marks on the melamine. But if it's wood, it sands right off, because you'll have to do kind of a final touch-up sand, and it comes right off. And with the white melamine, just as I cleaned up the face of the board with lacquer thinner, I'll do a final cleanup with lacquer thinner, and that will also take the metal off too. So don't worry about it. Okay. And you don't have to move the iron around too much. Just okay. Now you want to be careful, because right at the end where the edge banding flags over, you can break that right off. So you want to be careful. Now there's a couple ways that you can cut this overhang off, and I'll show you. And at this point, before you go any further, you can kind of check yourself. I'm fairly used to applying edge banding, so I know how much time to spend on it and move along. With doing an instruction, I'm moving a lot slower than if I was applying it for real. I can pretty much slam this stuff out, but you can feel and get a visual on how that if it's adhered properly. Now, one of the things that I do is I take my razor sharp chisel, and I just stropped this. I actually shaved some hair off the back of my hand here, seeing how sharp it was as I worked on it a little bit. But I'll take my block and hang it over, and then take my chisel, using the edge of the board as the guide, run it up there, and just cut it right off, and now that's a flush cut. Another way to do it is I'll take it out and take my chisel and just stand it on the table and use the edge of the board once again. Now, you want to be careful. Your melamine is overhanging just not hardly a 1/16 of an inch, And if you set it down and slide it, you can very likely break the edge off. So you want to be very careful. So at this point, I'm going to just use a quick clamp and use my chisel to take the edge banding off. Now I do have a fast cap cutter to slide along, and it'll cut both sides at once, and I'll show you that when I put a second piece on. But first I'm going to show you how to use the file, or how to use the chisel to get a clean cut. Okay, now as I use my chisel, what I'm going to do is ride my knuckle right along the face edge of the board. And I want to take the chisel and I want to turn it in, and what it's doing is it's going to reference off the face of the board, and with the blade cocked in facing towards the board, my finger rides along, and what it happens is it forces the cut in against the board, and it'll give you a clean cut with your melamine. Now you do want to be careful. You're going to have to read the grain if you're applying real wood edge banding. Melamine is actually quite easy to apply. So I'll start out, turn it in, and I got a wider chisel here. It's like a 1-inch chisel, and that gives you a clean cut. Now, one thing you got to be careful, this melamine is extremely sharp along the edge. So what we're going to do is just hit it real easy with a single mill cup bastard file. And that feels good. I've actually cut my knuckles, breaking my knuckles across that, and it's extremely sharp, so I learned the hard way. And what you don't want is your family members getting cut on it, or if you're doing this as a project that's going out to a business, the business calling you because they've cut their fingers, and so that's something you need to be sure to do. Okay, I'm going to flip this over and do the other side real quick. Once again, I'll start facing out, turn it in a little bit like that. I'm riding my finger as a gauge, and see this chisel is able to reference off the face of this board, and it peels right off. Now I can see I've got just the couple little chips here, and I'll put the hinges on that side, and when you open the door, they'll be to the back end. You'll never see them. It's one of those details that you'll know about, but the clients will never see it. And don't bother pointing that stuff out to everybody. There's no sense in it. If you start taking a look at other work, and I get to see a lot of other work because as a pro contractor, I see there's a lot of crap out there, and it's not that I'm hiding anything, but the fact is my stuff's just as good as anybody else's, especially for commercial work. There's a thing called build to budget. And then what I like to do is just take the chisel and make that flush. I'm going to put one more piece of edge banding on so I can show you how to use the fast cap edger. See, now I can run my fingers along there and I don't feel any sharp edges. This is perfect. Looks really good. So, and my other chip was right over here, so I want to edge band that one, so we can see how much of those chips actually show up after the edge banding's on. You know what happens is when you put the edge banding on, you kind of, once you put that white edge on there and the glue kind of oozes into it and you file it off, it all kind of disappears. It becomes less noticeable. What you're seeing here it's not perfection, but what it is it's fully acceptable, and you can not have to worry about people complaining about that. I see stuff like this come out of the big cabinet shops that have the big heavy equipment. So this is perfectly acceptable. Okay, we're going to put I'm going to flip this over. Put the second piece of edge banding on. Now, one of the things that you have to be conscious of is when you did this first piece of edge banding, that it's completely shaved off and filed off so it doesn't stick out at all, because no matter if you use the fast cap edge bander or a chisel, once you rake it across this other end with a piece of edge banding on it, you might chip it off. So make sure that you've completely cleaned up this edge so that nothing catches it when it slides across. Okay. I want to focus on putting this one on. Remember, all we got to do is just flag it over evenly on the left and right. And you can just feel with your fingers that it's centered. And you can start with just a small portion of the iron to pin it in place. What happens is when you give that a little bit of a break for it to cool in place, you'll keep it from shifting around because, like I said, it's kind of pinned in place now. If I just kept moving along, this would still all be hot and potential for it to slide around if I messed up. And never start at one end, pin it down over here or pin it down somewhere else, and then try to fill in the middle, because very likely, most likely even, you're going to cause the melamine to buckle and get a crease in it somewhere, and then you'll have to end up tearing it off and redoing it. Now, it's okay if you mess up. The worst thing that can happen is you don't have enough edge banding. You might have to go get some more. But if you do mess up, you can heat it up and just peel it right back off. Not a big issue. So we'll go ahead and get this last piece heated up. I do like using the block. It's well worth it. You want to be careful on these ends not to snap them off. And that's what happens is I've done that before, and basically when I did that, it created a ragged edge, and I had to heat it up and peel it back off because it was actually unacceptable. Okay, now since I'm doing the fast cap, I like to go ahead and just cut that off in place. And then I'll even give it a little bit of a file. I just don't want anything extra hanging over that doesn't need to be. Now my fast cap, it has two cutters on it, one on each side. And I just clamp it on and zip it down. Now see right here, I did get just a very minor chip. So it was good that happened, and I'll get a picture of it here and you can see it. Now, the one thing about the fast cap is it still needs the file, it seems like. It doesn't quite get it. And I still got a good curl. Or it still needs the chisel, and now it needs the file. So you don't need to buy the fast cap edger. Just, you can really stick with your files. It's one of those things you think, oh, this will be a dream. I'll be able to do two edges at once. It doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work quite as good as you thought. So I'm gonna just hit it with the file. Okay, we're going to take a quick look, and as you can see, there is very little left of the chips on side 3, where I had the worst chip out. Had kind of at the beginning of the cut and at the end of the cut, there was just a couple little spots, and you can see here they turned out really good. The hinges will go on this side, so they won't be seen. And on number 4, there was one real close to the corner, also close to the spots where of side number 3, and that one's not even worth mentioning. Now take a look here. You can see the chip out from the fast cap edge bander. So you want to be careful of that. Well, that's some of the secrets, some of the tips, guys, of getting clean cuts in melamine and how to put some edge banding on, and how much you can, I don't want to say how much you can get away with, but basically, yeah, how much the materials will tolerate, those imperfections. Basically, a very wise guy once told me, we don't strive for perfection, we strive for excellence. And that's what I strive for. Basically, when it comes to woodworking and dealing with all these materials, it's so difficult for anything to be perfect. Number one, solid wood moves a lot, and you might be a machinist, get it to machinist perfection one day, and it'll move over the next day or two, and you'll lose those perfect measurements. So I don't deal in those tens of thousands of inches. And also with melamine, you just got to understand how to deal with trying to cover some of that stuff up. There are other things you can do. If you get some chip out and you don't want to redo, you can get a laminate repair kit and get a little tube of the white or whatever, if it's almond, whatever color melamine it is, so you can repair laminate and melamine in case you get a chip. And that stuff works very effectively. It's not real difficult to use. But that'll be for another video. We've got enough information for you to digest today. So that's all I have from the American Craftsman Workshop. And until I see you next time, be safe in your own shop.